Hey there, welcome to episode 175 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I am your host, as usual, Dan Hugo. We are recording this later in the day than normal, 6:41 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time here in Greater Vegas, on Friday, July 3rd, 2026. I would say Happy Independence Day, Happy July 4th tomorrow. Most people are celebrating in some way today. But I don't know. I think I'm going to wait for next year. Episode 175. Today's title and topic, Perception versus Reality versus Marketing. If you're not familiar with the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, let me tell you the quick version after I get some water. My voice has been challenged for the last 2 weeks at least, so bear with me. This will be a long episode. I don't know if I'll make it. My voice might. Or might not. Episode 175, Perception versus Reality versus Marketing. Cafe Genius Impresarios is an audio program focused on our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, although we do talk about things that are maybe outside of it, but which impact it. Cafe Genius is itself a name composed of two homages. Is that the plural? Cafe with two F's and no accent over the E is an homage to Cafe Centro, a small, adorable coffee shop that was located in the South Park in San Francisco, which is across the street from the ballpark. Used to be Pac Bell Ballpark, then it was AT&T, and now it's Oracle, if I'm not mistaken. I've been to Cafe Centro. I had been when it was open. Park benches, grass, trees, a coffee shop with a tagline where startups start. You get the idea. Twitter, rather famously, one of the things that was in development sometimes at Cafe Centro. I've said before and many times that the Greater Vegas area entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem should include Cafe Centro equivalents. We probably do have them. Probably Mothership is pretty close, and it's in more than one location. Cafe Centro did not make it all the way through the pandemic. I think they were open for a little while. Production by Street. I think they were open for a little bit after when things started opening up again, but I think they were just crushed. So that's how that goes. Genius for the genius lunches that used to take place in the Greater Vegas area. Rather than a whole day and free food, it was lunch. Various people who were pursuing their entrepreneurial pursuits as part of the downtown project or adjacent. I myself was working at Intel at the time, so I was not really part of the downtown project, just a spectator, frequent interloper. So I would get invited, I think, probably like 4 or 5 times. It wasn't like a weekly thing. It was just whenever, when people were around and a critical mass formed. I think it's an essential idea. We've tried bringing it back. We didn't get any interest whatsoever. People maybe too self-absorbed. It's hard to say. And then impresarios with 2 S's, a valid but not so common spelling. Those are people making stuff happen, and I'm representing you here today. Someday we'll have guests again. Hopefully they too will be impresarios. Cafe Genius Impresarios, here you are. Why are we talking about perception versus reality versus marketing? I believe last week's episode was about, it was proof motivated reasoning works. That's sort of a what would that be? It's a loaded topic title or something. Like, I selected content that was proof that motivated reasoning works, and that's basically motivated reasoning. Yeah, it's already going. So, perception versus reality versus marketing. I didn't want to make this about one white paper that has been recently published, even though it is mostly about that. But as I will explain, it's about the topic, and the paper is a great example. And I have selected it to illustrate the topic, which makes it also motivated reasoning. I'm not presenting you with different variations that are on one side or the other. I'm not performing like a fair comparison. I am going to run through the document as fairly as I can, but I have selected the topic and this document to go together for today because I think this is an actual problem, and it happens that the document is a good illustration of that. My opinion. Maybe you can, maybe you will differ. So let's see what else. Yeah. So Cafe Genius Impresarios. Think about being a guest someday. Got to get that back online and have conversations about this stuff. Can't be just my opinion all the time. So I will also say that there's a link to a document on a website called ssrn.com. And I have no idea what their policy is on breaking links, as in if someone wants to remove the document, it may disappear completely. So I've quoted some things, and I will read them as quotes from the document. But the document itself could disappear. I have a link to it. It could break. That would be unfortunate. So we'll see if it will still stand alone, if I can give the impression of what I'm observing or commenting on with this particular white paper. It is not a research paper. Initially, I thought, okay, maybe it's just a proposal, but it refers to itself internally, within the document as a white paper. So, okay, it's a white paper. It is written by a professor and I believe a master's candidate or a master's degree. What is it? Would that be a postgraduate degree holder at the UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and they are in the finance department of the, I can't remember what is the credit here? The Department of Finance at the Lee Business School. There you go. So the authors are Daniel Chi. He's a professor. He's the department chair, if I'm not mistaken. And Amin Asadi, who has a UNLV.edu email address, but I conversed with this person via LinkedIn direct messages. And apparently he works also at a bank, a national bank, a brand well known, but I'll know, I don't have to say anything about that. You can find it yourself probably, or you can probably ask him. But Dr. Daniel Chi, I'm connected to Dr. Daniel Chi on LinkedIn, but I've never had any conversations with him. I tried. Vegas is still Vegas. So we'll go through the document. I'm not going to read every word, obviously, but it's not too long. I'm not going to run down every single page. It's 38 pages in total, and that's what the reference is. And there are some infographics and charts and stuff. So we'll run through it and we'll see how it fits into the premise of today's episode. So, which is again perception versus reality versus marketing. I'm gonna change that to hype. I'm gonna change it to hype. We can do whatever we want here, right? So perception versus reality versus hype. Should I do reality, perception, hype? I don't know. I'll reserve the right to change it. It could change. It's those three words in some order. So hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary, which I'll read to you, and the links for today's episode. There are actually the two usual links, and then three. Just one is, two of them are double lines. So in the format I am viewing them now, they're wrapped, so it looked like more, but it's two, the usual two, and then three more for today. So on that note, let me read the summary. You're not listening to this today anyway. It is essentially a holiday weekend that already started, but I like to publish consistently, so it won't be Friday morning. But as I mentioned, we normally would publish it in the morning. Did I mention it? That we normally publish Friday mornings, but today it will be Friday evening for no particular reason. Busy is as busy does. Somewhere between what is objectively true and what we seem to want to believe is subjective. I didn't even finish the thing. What we believe is objectively true is sometimes found in hype. I was almost going to say sometimes called marketing, or sometimes called hype. Sometimes called hype. There you go. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's good enough. The links for today's episode, the Cafe Genius homepage, cafe with two F's and an E without an accent. And it turns out that is also easier to type and easier to display in a URL, so you don't have any % characters. Cafe, two F's, one E, no accent, cafegenius.org. Someday soon. I think last time I said I would be updating or altering the content or something, or getting started on it. So we had our annual board meeting on Friday for the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, having just filled 2 open seats on our board. So then there was the aftermath of setting up accounts and getting some things in order now that there are more people involved and so on. So I will claim that as my excuse this week. But the number of things, it's part of the reason we're recording this later today. It's a lot of stuff. So, and it's hot. Okay, enough excuses. cafegenius.org. One of these days it will look nicer and there'll be more stuff. There is a lot of stuff to put on there, actually, in one way or another. Host, profile page, linking, everything as usual. Buymeacoffee.com. Production by Street. Somebody on a motorcycle, I believe. Profile page, linking, everything. I've had this buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo page for 5 years and 3 months now. You do not need to spend any money. You do not need to... you don't even really need to click on anything if you don't want to, but there are links to all of my audio programs, to my various projects, to some affiliate links for my favorite coffee beans and other products I actually use. And there's some biographical information up at the top. And of course, by now you must know that Buy Me an Update, the Monday morning 5-minute rundown on the previous week's audio program topics and news and announcements upcoming, was published exclusively at Buy Me a Coffee. But then it became very apparent that without an RSS feed, it doesn't count as a podcast. So I still publish it there. Its namesake, Buy Me an Update, can be found at buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo/posts. But then 2 hours later, every Monday morning, it is published in the usual places: Apple, Amazon, Spotify, YouTube. There's a RSS feed, of course. So legitimately a podcast published on Monday mornings. 5 minutes, can't go wrong. Do the treadmill for 5 minutes. You'll be happier for it. Now, the episode links. Transforming Las Vegas into a Financial Center is the paper to which I was referring, and you can see that it's published on papers.ssrn.com. So hopefully it stays there. I recently wrote in our LinkedIn newsletter, I did a first pass through the LVGEA, that's the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, 3-year strategy document. I cannot remember. It's either a 3-year plan, 3-year strategy plan, something. It's 3 years, and they're planning to diversify the economy of Greater Vegas in 3 years. So similarly, that one is posted on the LVGEA website. It could still disappear yesterday, but at least it's on a site that they control. I don't know what papers.ssrn.com does as far as document retention, document removal, on request, who knows? But you will find the paper there. Is it worth reading? If you are in the finance sector, or if you are interested in how the economy works, or if you are interested in some of the stuff that's going to be happening over the next 3 years, yes. But if you are not interested in any of those things, no. SWOT, I don't know if you know what that is. Hopefully you've heard of it. I'm going to have a section in this week's newsletter on LinkedIn. Our newsletter will move off of LinkedIn, by the way. We're not getting any traction. Nobody really cares about this stuff on LinkedIn, apparently, which is strange. There's a link to Jared, whatever his last name was, on the HBO series Silicon Valley, where he does a very quick explanation of what SWOT means. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's usually a grid, 2x2. You can write these things down on a dry erase board or something, and it's a great way for people to have a sort of a map of here are some things that we came up with, our brainstorming session, that we should be thinking about, or we should be talking about, or researching, or something. Whenever you have a good idea, you may find that there are weaknesses and threats that you didn't think about because it was such a good idea. And I will assert that that's what's happening here with this paper. Although, on the other hand, it is a white paper that is intended, I believe, to persuade. So, I'm only going to tell you the parts that meet my goal that I want to convince you to be supportive of. So it's motivated reasoning and action. And we happen to have talked about that recently. The article about Lost in Austin book, which I will refer to towards the end of today's episode. No, I'm referring to the book, Lost in Austin. But this article on The Hill, but the article's okay. Whatever your thoughts are on The Hill, I'm kind of hit or miss on that platform. But if you don't want to read the book, but this is an interesting rundown on the subject matter. It's essentially Austin used to have a certain culture and a certain population and a certain feel to it. And then when it became the other Silicon Valley, connected by the Nerdbird commuter flights, this is back when I was working in Silicon Valley. So, oh yeah, Austin is the other Silicon Valley, and there's these commuter flights, and there's all these tech companies are moving in, and so what happened to Austin as a result? And I think that's something that should be on people's minds if they're curious about what could go on in these economic diversification efforts. I'm not saying economic diversification is bad. It's kind of like, Poltergeist, the movie. They built the housing development on top of a cemetery. They only moved the headstones. So you just have to be careful that things are done correctly with accountability, and transparency would be nice. But, that people don't say, oh, we can just do the bare minimum and we just won't worry about it. So anyway, yeah, I think we should all be looking out for what will be happening over the next 3 to 10 years and who benefits and then who does not. So yeah, check out the article. Check out the book. I read the book. The book is okay. I'm not going to endorse it as a great read. Project Hail Mary is a great read. I read the book a long time ago. The movie is okay. The movie is a good adaptation. So if you're looking for some sort of a notion of my assessments, I think the Project Hail Mary movie was very good. It was very enjoyable. I think I probably would have enjoyed it slightly more if I had not read the book. But on the other hand, I think the book was much better level of detail, and so you can't make exact screenplay out of a book. But the book was much more interesting because of my interests. So that's where I'm coming from. Anyway, this is warning. This is episodic motivated reasoning that you're about to hear. If you only listen to this episode of this program and ignore all the other episodes of Cafe Genius Impresarios, then this episode is a great example of motivated reasoning. I have a point of view, and I have selected a recently published paper, a self-described white paper. To be clear, again, it's not a research paper or a study or anything. Self-described white paper as evidence that my opinions are correct, that my viewpoint is correct, or at least valid, or in my case, I have typed at leave valid. Who types this stuff? I don't know. And spoiler alert, the paper also does that for its point of view, but we'll get into that. So the paper itself is basically motivated reasoning in action, and my selecting it as evidence for my point of view to prove my point of view also. So if I was being, completely fair, I would try to find evidence pro and con and so on, and probably have somebody on to discuss another point of view and so on. So a healthy debate, that's what FFS Talk is for. But across all of my episodes, and this being episode 175, there's a few, I've done a little bit more research here and there. I've done a little bit deeper a dive and so on. So this is not intended to be like an all-out assault on the paper or its authors, but more on the title and topic of today's episode, which is hype, basically, and then what happens. Perception, reality is reality, hopefully. That's a philosophical question for another time, but how people perceive it, and then the hype that goes into making the perception one way or another, I suppose. If you've happened to have listened to all those episodes, you'll know, this kind of fits into an overall theme and approach, and I try to be very fair, and we'll see. We'll see what you think. I did reach out to the co-author. I asked if there was a SWOT analysis or something similar, but I literally did not get an answer. They just simply did not answer. Said something else like, we should go get a coffee or something. I don't know if that means I will get an answer then. Who knows? I mean, I didn't even get a yes or no. And while I have also connected with Professor Daniel Chi, I believe that's correct, Chi, and both of the engagements with these two people are on LinkedIn, which I'm not a fan of, where people do go to LinkedIn to connect and then ignore each other. So I got the ghost. What are you going to do? I didn't contact him about this paper, but I contacted him shortly after we had connected, which was probably a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months. We can look over this paper today, though, not as an assessment of the authors or the real potential of Greater Vegas and Southern Nevada as a financial center or whatever, but the irrational exuberance expressed by some concerning the next, say, 5 years regarding economic diversity and the development of that economic frontier, with a little bit of hand waving mixed in. And by a little bit, I mean kind of more than a little bit. Converted to marketing hype and sprinkled over the region to create the perception of a success before we get there. And I've literally heard people talk about how, it's a done deal, whatever it is. Oh yeah, it's blowing up. And you're like, what? This hasn't happened yet. This is in the future and we are not. So perception is a thing in Vegas that concerns me a little bit because it isn't always correct. And our local media outlets and the communication infrastructure in Greater Vegas doesn't help that. So hang on a second, water break. I should point out now while it's quiet, by the way, upstairs there's some sort of movement, as in dragging. It sounds like dragging file cabinets or something. So it's like that squeaky, protracted, awful noise. I don't know if it's audible. We'll see. But if that sound is made, I'm just going to press through. We're not going to worry about it. SWAT. And don't ever confuse this with SWAT, Special Weapons and Tactics. I believe that's what that stands for. This is not that. People will, let's SWAT it out. Let's SWAT this is SWOT, which is it's a lightweight structure for identifying the 4 areas of an idea, a design, a project, a startup. Lean Canvas is probably a better idea for a startup if you're thinking about starting an actual company. But a SWOT is almost always applicable to just about everything. It's simple. You need one piece of paper if you're going to do it in person. You need a dry erase board, otherwise, maybe, or you need a shared document, or you don't even need to share the document. You just email them to each other. Super easy, barely an inconvenience. So we have the Wikipedia link if you are not familiar with SWOT. The reason I asked of the co-author if there was a SWOT analysis associated with this paper is because the idea here is to actually fill in potential strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, SWOT, in the associated quadrants of the SWOT grid. And ideally, this is a brainstorming or ideation step that these co-authors would have gone through, where some of the items placed in any of the grid quadrants may not be correctly placed. And that's an opportunity to say, oh, it's not really a strength, it's more of a weakness. Or maybe they're not relevant. Oh, that doesn't really impact our project. It is something, but it is not something that we need to be concerned with here. Or it might not even be appropriate at all. Like that's none of these things and also not related. So, but that's what brainstorming is for. It's not like nobody is getting swatted down, haha. But that's a time to get some of this stuff out. It's it either starts a conversation or continues one with a little bit of structure, but it's really a lightweight structure. And oh yeah, that goes over in this quadrant instead of that one. Okay, so when everybody agrees on everything, okay, we're on the same page. Very nice. When we formed a 501c6 business league here in Vegas for a thing it was about 2018, I think. The first thing we did, we had our first founder meeting. Everybody was sitting at a table. It was a long table, but it was a little bit more, it was rectangular, but there was like, somehow it didn't feel like a long table. It felt like everybody kind of could see each other. The first thing we did was, at the founder meeting, was pass around a sheet of paper with the 4 quadrants. I think I folded it in, half and then half again. SWOT with a marker. And I said, yeah, here, everybody, pass this around. Write at least one thing in one square, or 2, or whatever you want. So that we're starting off with some of the same ideas. And then we went through them. So jot down some of the ideas and then review them. Okay, check mark, got those. And then we were off to the races with these notions. And I shared what the notions were with other members as they joined or wanted to become a part of it. Like, this information was available, but the founding group was on the same page. I discovered later that the people who were joining in later were not on the same page. So this is a challenge either way. SWOT itself doesn't solve anything. It's not the big thing, like, oh, you got the SWOT grid, everything is fine, we're all good. But it is a start, and I think it's a kind of a minimum baseline that is so easy to do. Why would you not? So it can be done with dry erase boards, post-it notes, shared text documents. You could have a room full of people who they write in on the different grids. Then you can use post-it notes to vote on things that are to prioritize, things that are most important to least important. There's all kinds of ways to use this information. And of course, you can do it online in a video conference, Zoom call or whatever. You can use like a shared whiteboard tool. I like Excalibur. So there's just it's so easy to do. It's ridiculous not to. So whatever works for you. The take home is to literally account for as many possibilities as can be imagined, even if they're not relevant, like I said. So insert a reference here if you like. This is not direction to me. This is to you. Insert a reference here to the Donald Rumsfeld's infamous unknown unknowns meme if you like. So there are known knowns and known unknowns, and write down as many things as you possible so there are fewer unknown unknowns. It's just a good start. It's not legal advice, but suggestion, but one given passionately. From my read of the paper for today, weaknesses have been couched as strengths or opportunities, which is sort of funny. And there are few, if any, threats explicitly spelled out. So there are a couple of things that could be considered threats. So, we can argue that was done, but it is so much more obvious when you present things as strength, weakness, or equivalent words, but you basically break things down into here's what we have and here's what we do not have. Things like this. The paper sort of wanders around like in the area of these, but I'm not convinced that was the goal was to express the 4 quadrants, however you want to label them. So, I mean, you can do SWOT in other ways and you can present it in other ways, sure. So, but if you use common words like strength, weakness, opportunity, threat, then everybody will be on the same page with you, which is always nice. So there were no threats spelled out in detail as far as I could tell. Again, you could interpret some of these things, but I think being explicit would have been helpful. So you could say, oh yeah, these are basically threats. These are basically opportunities, and these are basically weaknesses that we have to address to achieve the opportunity. Sure. But it is what it is. But I guess you want the idea. I guess you could lead someone to draw the conclusion that transforming Greater Vegas into a financial hub or center is a matter of just doing it, not a matter of overcoming active obstacles like threats and weaknesses. So if you don't use that explicit language, maybe people will buy that. Oh yes, not having enough water is actually a good thing. I don't know if we don't have enough water yet, but it's going to be an interesting couple of years ahead. Interesting. This could be taken as a form of motivated reasoning. That's what I'm asserting. But let's look at the paper as a normal person might and decide what this is trying to tell us. What is the paper trying to do here? Or convince us of, perhaps, is more appropriate. So I'm going to run through it by section. If you have the paper, we're just going to run through in order. There are 7 sections, including the introduction, executive summary and introduction, and then the final remarks or whatever it's called. So the executive summary and introduction. Yeah. So we'll start there. This is actually good. It's informative. And while there is some optimistic, motivated reasoning happening right out the gate, this is actually the place for that. That's how this works. You want to start off with some optimism. I usually use courtroom opening statements and so on as examples for these things. So in an opening statement in a courtroom trial, the idea is to set the stage, especially with a jury, for the arguments and evidence which will follow, what we're going to try to prove here, what we're trying to accomplish and why and so on. You kind of get free reign within certain limits, but you can say what you want. So we're not going to go too crazy. And then I'm going to change that by going a little bit crazy in the next bullet item. So here we have one point of view, unlike in a courtroom where you'd have 2 sides, each present an opening argument, and then, let the trial begin. A couple of things to point out. So on page 1, So the numbered page 1, it's not the cover sheet, page 1, explicitly, this is a quote, "What do we already have and what more is needed?" Oh, okay. These are the questions we explore in this white paper, which is a clear statement, not exploring what we do not already have and what we cannot get, or basically the weaknesses and threats on the SWOT grid. This is introductory information, but it still gets the tone. So what do we already have and what more is needed could be considered strengths and weaknesses. It doesn't really do a good job of laying out. Like, I would love to see introductory information be, we started out by considering the 4 quadrants, and we will aim to provide reason, or at least supportive evidence, in quotes, that the strengths really are strengths, that the weakness can be overcome, that the opportunities are real and viable, and that the threats are defensible, or we can defend against the threats. The positions are defensible. So the possibility of Greater Vegas as a financial center is a defensible notion, even though there are threats. And here are the threats, etc. Right? So I would love to see somebody start going in that direction where you're just upfront. Here's where we're starting, and then go from there. Page 2. Don't worry, I'm not going to go page by page. It's only through the introduction, which is 3 pages, I think. No, there's 6 pages, but it's 6 pages total. I think the introduction, executive summary is 3 pages. Introduction, 3 more, something like that. I have the paper. I just don't want to look at it right now because I've looked at it a lot. Page 2, final summary paragraph, the executive summary. Okay, so that's 1 and 2. A phased development roadmap emerges from this analysis, or is it a white paper? No, analysis, centered on regulatory clarity, human capital formation. At least I didn't say human livestock. Human capital formation, industry clustering, and institutional coordination, with deliberate policy alignment and sustained investment in talent and infrastructure. Las Vegas can position itself as an emerging financial hub in the Western United States, contributing to economic diversification and sustainable growth. Unquote. End quote, unquote. It is implied that we lack these elements, possibly then considered weaknesses and threats. Some might be threats. And the threats would be outside forces. Weaknesses are inside, quote unquote, forces or things that we can address internally. But threats are from outside, and we would have to somehow defend. Threats are like competition, like New York and California already are those things, and they may say, forget about Vegas, come to New York. Who knows? But so this is a hint at addressing those topics, but I wish it was a little bit more explicit and a little bit more detailed. So this will be clarified through this document that these really could be viewed as opportunities, though. So that's what I said earlier. We don't have that. Oh yeah. So one example would be, I'll just pull it out of here from memory. We are, I think it was Southern Nevada, or maybe it's Nevada in general, 0.89% of the fiscal center marketplace. So we're barely in it, but that means we can make a small, small additions or small growth will actually be a large percentage growth. Okay. But that's still a small growth. So, you scale by population, you scale by ranking in a larger community, I suppose, of financial centers. Okay, fine. I don't know. We're very small, so that's a strength. Or it's a weakness because we don't have the resources nor the momentum. Who knows? Page 3 of the introduction. This will all make sense if you actually look at the document. Then you'll say, oh yeah, okay, page 3. Quote from the document. Tremendous efforts have been made to diversify the economy, enhance its resilience, and cultivate a more robust economic ecosystem. But more needs to be done, more can be done, and more should be done. It is not only an economic imperative, it is a moral imperative for our community, our citizens, really should be residents, I suppose, but sure, citizens, and our children. This study, okay, now that's where I'm a little bit thrown off because it's a white paper or a study. I think a study would have far more data, direct measured data, or at least meta study data. Okay, we'll set that aside. This study is another effort towards that direction. So the assertion is that all efforts toward the proposed transformation are a benefit to all, a moral imperative, in fact. A recurring theme also stated near this block of text, same page, that Nevada in general leans towards low-wage jobs, while establishing a financial hub in Las Vegas would bring or otherwise provide high-wage jobs. No change, well, typo there, no chance this would lead to gentrification and pricing out of the existing workforce, which, by the way, is part of the fun economy, which is receiving substantial investment and growth of late. So it's a moral imperative to transform the economy, which could lead to some of the people that this is in service to or for, could lead them to be priced out. Sorry, you can't live here anymore because your job is gone and you're going to have to upskill to work here. So I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there, and I think this is common here in Vegas. Call me crazy. I don't know if you can hear that upstairs. It's what it is. Final on page 3, this sentence, quote, finance has other attractive attributes. It produces stable and high-paying jobs, requires low natural resources such as water or energy, and does not pollute the environment. Now, the authors have assumed that zero human involvement will take place. Because, well, first of all, if you have to build any buildings, none of that is true. But finance, especially if the implication is that people, talent, human capital, will be imported from other places. If you increase the population, you'll absolutely have an impact on water and energy and traffic and other such things. So that statement, just taken by itself, is not correct. So even if you do have... Now, we can also say that if there is a financial center established that attains some level of notoriety, you import some talent, you also convert some people from hospitality and leisure and hospitality to working in finance, or more people from the educational pathways enter the finance field. Maybe we don't have to import as much talent later. Maybe the people that did move here decided to leave because they're like, this place is whack. But you could have a positive effect on the environment if you have more, if you have a slower migration to higher wage jobs and more local people can participate in that. It isn't such an economic shock. So you don't do, explosive changes to cost of living. Pandemic is a great example. Housing prices shot up 25 to 40%, priced a lot of people out. A lot of people left. So that has to be a consideration. That's just the way it is, because the fun economy is an ongoing concern. You cannot, the term is often used, you cannot cannibalize the workforce and the economy by stealing people or pricing them out. So they either move jobs or they move where they live. Can't afford to live in Vegas anymore. Those people can no longer work in the fun economy. So you've now had a direct impact or an indirect impact on the fun economy through this diversification effort. So some of this stuff is a little bit hand wavy, and I've not done a deep dive here with a detailed analysis of potential economic impact of these changes, but that would be a part of a more serious paper on this topic. Pages 4 through 6, other financial centers are referenced by city as comparison. So these are a substantial part of the paper, which follows. There'll be a lot of references to these locations and trends over time and so on, where the factors compared are simplified for the purposes of introduction. So this is only the introduction to the whole paper. It is interesting to note that Silicon Valley is placed with other cities, such as London and New York, where Silicon Valley is 5 counties, maybe more. Some people will not include San Francisco in Silicon Valley. I think that is slightly disingenuous, but depending on context. In this case, Silicon Valley and San Francisco used together, you basically are saying, well, San Francisco is a much more storied financial center with a longer history. Silicon Valley sort of evolved into this out of necessity with so much capital floating around and so on. I can see where they're differentiated, but even if you're saying San Francisco and Silicon Valley, if you compare Silicon Valley to other places, you have to be aware that maybe you're comparing one very large city against many, many small cities. So there are regulatory considerations, your cross county boundaries and so on. So I just found that interesting that simplification might be interesting to note. Yeah. 5 or more counties with multiple cities in various regions with all manner of factors varying among them. And we can refer way back to episode 85 of this program, Vegas is the Next Vegas, where we looked at how Silicon Valley's innovation culture emerged over a very long time, over 100 years. This culture is listed as a positive. The culture, the establishment of a culture of innovation in Vegas and a tolerance of failure. So, this is such a positive thing, but it really doesn't describe that this evolved or emerged, but it evolved. But either way, from a time as long ago as the gold rush, 1849. I went into that in great detail in that episode with references aplenty. And, Leland Stanford selling picks and shovels to gold miners, started a little university named after his son. Stanford is referenced here as one of the assets of Silicon Valley that makes it what it is, and that's true. But it didn't just spring out of nowhere. So there's a longer story that often, not just in this paper, often gets glossed over or simplified, and there's really more to it. Yeah, it was a long journey. And then Las Vegas. Let's refer to the end of the page 5 and go to page 6. So I'm going to read directly from the document. I didn't copy and paste it this time. So page 5 and 6. It's not that long. It's half end of the page. So quoting, Las Vegas is currently at a comparable point in its history, and he's compared it to all these different places. They have compared it. It is internationally recognized for its tourism, gaming, and hospitality industries, and already possesses several fundamental components that have historically enabled other hubs to flourish. So, it's all the same, basically. We're doing gaming. Could just change that to hospitality. So there's a weird conflation there. I see that a lot. Okay, back to the quote. There is a favorable tax and regulatory environment, and that is, interrupting, that is fueled by the fun economy. So if you break the fun economy, some of those things might change. The environment, which I would question as we enter the summer for real, 110 degrees on Monday. I lived in Phoenix, so it's bearable, but the environment is not always friendly, if that's what they are referring to. Along with world-class convention centers, true, and infrastructure that facilitates connectivity to global markets. They are talking about, I'm going to say they, both of them, the co-authors. Connectivity means airport, transportation, and also internet access, I suppose. Fun fact, Southern Nevada was where Enron, if you remember Enron was going to do for the internet access what they did for electricity. So they had facilities here in Southern Nevada, which were bought up by one Rob Roy and called Switch. So basically, literally an internet connectivity hub in Enterprise here. I think it's an Enterprise. I think, let's say it's in unincorporated Clark County, but connects the entire internet basically through Southern Nevada. Moreover, UNLV as an educational and research institution, can train financial talent. Aspirational perhaps, maybe, but hopefully. The city's geographical location in the West region, its potential to host global events and networks. So location may or may not be a factor in modernity. It's hard to say because there are a lot of places already established with a long track record. So does being in the arid desert facing a generational or longer water crisis across multiple states qualify you to be the next big thing? Don't know. It's just a thing we should pay attention to. And its reputation for bold innovations present intriguing possibilities. Ooh. Other cities rose to prominence by leveraging comparable strengths. So their strengths, we're calling out strengths. New York capitalizes on its port, London on its empire, Frankfurt on its central bank, Charlotte on its favorable regulatory environment, and San Francisco on its universities. San Francisco is also a port city. They're on the West Coast, so a gateway to trade and so on. There was also a very substantial military presence there thanks to World War II. There's a few things that are sort of hand-waved there about San Francisco in particular. The fact that Silicon Valley and San Francisco are next to each other or the same thing should not be ignored. I believe the implication in this paragraph is that Vegas has all the things that all these other cities do. I would say slow your roll a little bit. The question is whether Las Vegas can pursue a similar strategy by consciously aligning policy, education, and community support. Now, community support is important because community could mean people who like finance. It could mean people who are interested in economic development, or it could mean everyone who will be impacted by such a transformation. In the latter case, most people won't know about this until it happens, and then they'll be priced out, perhaps. Community support to capture this opportunity. What strategic variables need to be there, and how should they be put together? What advantage may this transition yield for the city, the region, and its citizens? And I will simply say that the Formula One race is my go-to example in recent times of how some action can be taken that will impact some in a very positive way, but will impact a lot of people in a very negative way. And at the end, it's a shoulder shrug and, oh, sorry. So I'm always a little bit dubious, and this is just, people should be a little bit cynical when it comes to their government or actions being taken on their behalf that are like, wait a minute, what are you guys doing? So then there's an infographic from industrial centers to global hubs. You can check that out in the document. I don't think the document is made in an accessible way, so if you can't see it, don't know what happens from there. So I have nothing to do with that. Where are we? Did I scroll past this? Okay, here we are. Okay, my apologies. Again, the summary and introductory materials are not intended to present a deep dive with comprehensive analysis of all the SWOT quadrants, perhaps, but it is important to see what we are prepared for with some insights on the author's perspectives. I mean, it's important to know this stuff because this could be the basis of something not exactly this, but I think it's interesting. Like, I would love to have seen a publication of the nature of the conversations and survey and whatnot that went into the 3-year strategy. There were some summaries, but it would be interesting to know, what did the water people think? What did the real estate people think? Because they had, and Dr. Chi was on there, the author of this paper, was among the contributors to the 3-year strategy. So it'd be interesting to know what their perspectives were on various issues. I'd love to see that stuff be public. That's transparency, which is hard to come by. So, okay, hang on, water break. Okay, section 2 is lessons. This section of the paper is essentially cherry-picked factors that compare well with the Southern Nevada region and its geographical relationships and with other important places. Proximity to LA, proximity to Silicon Valley, proximity to Arizona, whatever. You can go through there. I just made those up, but specifics are in the document. Why did I make them up? Because I don't know if the proximity to the indicated proximities are actually like the best thing. So you can pick your own. Pick the places that you think are most important because they're close to Vegas, or that make Vegas more important because it is close to them. Maybe it's your family, wherever they are. So each factor listed includes a lesson for Las Vegas, and then those are summarized at the end. So forgive what may seem harsh, but this is an entirely motivated reasoning section. It's motivated reasoning in action, driving towards support for the position. So now I always say, like, a defense attorney, in the courtroom analogy, a defense attorney is not going to present evidence that is not exculpatory, right? So, this is part of the deal, is that you're going to get, but we're not getting both sides. So there is no opposing party that's going to say, well, wait a minute, these other locations are more important. This is, whatever. So no criticality is introduced here. Las Vegas has all these various factors to some degree. Yay. So in aggregate, Las Vegas is every bit as capable of transforming into a finance hub as anywhere else, right? That's the implication. Note that in this entire section, time is essentially flat Or put another way, events and circumstances along with geography and relative placement of places and resources and whatnot have all worked out as they needed to when they needed to. No need to worry. So there's really no time temporal perspective in this rundown. So how long did it take for Silicon Valley to become Silicon Valley? Over 100 years. People often think like, well, in 2008, you're like, no, 2008, you're already well beyond where things were critical to fall into place. Now you're standing on the shoulders of giants. Come on. Since this is a cherry-picked section anyway, we can pick a couple of examples. So I'll go to the document from section 2, pages 8 to 11, and we will include the final lesson summary on page 11 so that they're all wrapped up. Note that there is an infographic on page 12 re-illustrating the lessons, and a table on page 13 which again summarizes the lessons compared to non-financial and financial hub examples. So it's non-financial, financial, and then the lesson for Vegas for particular scenarios. So let's revisit section 2 briefly. I'm going to go with ecosystems and agglomeration. I just selected this at random. So I'm going to read it. It's 2 paragraphs. It's very brief. Don't worry. Quote, the automakers in Detroit established so these are examples of other places and then the lesson for Vegas. The automakers in Detroit established a network of suppliers, toolmakers, and logistics companies. Hollywood became self-sustaining when studios brought in actors, directors, and craftspeople and support services clustered nearby. Silicon Valley created an innovative environment where successful businesses spawned startups. People moved around easily, and venture capitalists further strengthened the cycle. So that's pretty oversimplified when you think about it. A similar story happened in financial hubs. The Wall Street cluster in New York offered liquidity unmatched by any other cluster. Since many international banks were concentrated in London, it became the world center for foreign exchange and global finance. And the Chicago Board of Trade linked agriculture to finance, helping the city stay connected to the global market. So the lesson for Las Vegas, ecosystems and agglomeration. One successful institution or company can initiate an ecosystem. The most crucial challenge is to foster clustering. It involves close collaboration among venture capital, research centers, legal services, and regulators to establish the self-reinforcing dynamics that contribute to a hub's resilience. Okay, unquote, end quote. So great. All you have to do is convince a whole bunch of finance-related entities to establish a presence or relocate here. But do remember, as I mentioned earlier, you're competing. There's going to be an opportunity cost. Oh, should we go finance or advanced manufacturing? Or should we go with healthcare and general health, sports fitness? Should we go biotech? Right. So how many of these, so like say each of these industries drew an extra 100,000 people to the greater Vegas area over the next 3 to 7 years. So by 20, what are we going to be? By 2040, 2030, is it 2030? We're supposed to be at 3 million. Clark County is at 2.4 million right now. So you'd basically get to 3 million. Definitely. If you had 100,000 people for finance. Now finance, I think the job projection in this document was more like, was it 25? Was there a projection? But as you start adding these people, you start to bump into that like, oh, we don't need any resources. They don't use any water or energy. Like, well, the people do though. So I kind of think there's a lot of like blue sky here, but not a lot of reality. So take that for what you will. I'm going to do the human capital one, and then that'll be it. So this also is like even less than the other one. Human capital and talent. And remember that the talent pool is part of the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. So it's what are the educational resources and what are people studying and learning? So how many people do we have here that can contribute to the ecosystem and participate in it? So similarly, quote, undoubtedly one of the most important factors in every hub is the human capital. Remember, they don't use water or electricity. In the case of Detroit, the needed talent and human capital came from those skilled machinists who switched to automobile manufacturing. Creative talents such as actors, writers, and directors were drawn to Hollywood because they preferred to be close to the available opportunities there. The importance of Stanford and UC Berkeley to Silicon Valley is undeniable. As the train, what is it? As they train, I was like train culture from as they train engineers and foster a culture of mobility that disseminates knowledge across companies. That is true. I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley, so I'll say like that is another simplification. A kind of a hand wave on timing. Also, it took a long time. There was a lot of emerging culture that kind of cultivated itself, sort of, or fed back on itself. Anyway, similar dynamics can be seen in financial hubs. Universities and vocational schools contributed to Frankfurt's development as Germany's financial hub. New York and London attracted talents from around the world to strengthen their ecosystems. So completely cherry-picked through this whole section. We should point out that Detroit kind of took a nosedive for a little while. I think they're kind of making the comeback. It's taken a while. Hollywood right now is going through some trouble as far as retaining ongoing movie production. Greater Vegas wants to be Hollywood 2.0, and that failed 3 passes through the legislature, so who knows? But there will still be some sort of media production here. So using Detroit and Hollywood as examples is not necessarily ideal, and Silicon Valley has its own issues. Would you want to live in Silicon Valley? I will never move back there just because it's become so much of not what it was that it's almost frightening. So be careful what you wish for. But the lesson for Vegas, and then we'll get out of this section, I promise. Emerging as a financial hub requires not only attracting corporations, but also human capital and talent. I'm not a fan of human capital. That's very sterile. It is imperative to strengthen and grow finance-related curricula, good use of the word, 25 cents, at UNLV to train skilled professionals. For example, UNLV recently established a new major in insurance and risk management. I bet casinos have already had people doing actuarial, computing odds, bookies, handicapping games, events, sports, which is one of the very few in Western U.S. and will support the growth of the IRM sector in Las Vegas or anywhere else. So I've talked to a lot of students who don't necessarily feel like they want to stay in Vegas. They might want to go out and maybe go for the big leagues and whatnot. So not everybody has a startup mentality to build a new thing, right? Oh, there's no real 0.89% of the overall is in Vegas. So we can double that and get to almost 2%. And some will say, I'd rather go to where there's like a lot of percent. New York, San Francisco, Frankfurt, London, all these places that are in this paper. So I think there's a presumption that it's a done deal. And I don't know that's production by the street. I don't know that that's always a safe assumption. I think people might make decisions based on their needs, not necessarily loyalty. So here's the 5 lessons learned, and that'll give you a flavor. So from what has been discussed, 5 universal lessons stand out. Geography initiates concentration, while infrastructure determines the scale and sustainability of that concentration. Institutions and policy choices shape whether early advantages translate into long-term success. Ecosystems and agglomeration are essential to the durability of industry hubs. Human capital and talent form the foundation of innovation, growth, and competitiveness. Specialization, number 5, specialization enables emerging hubs to compete by developing strong, defensible niches. The message for Las Vegas is crystal clear. By focusing on infrastructure, clarity and regulation, human capital and talent development, and becoming an expert, I guess the city becoming an expert, the region becoming an expert in a specific area, the city. And so let's be clear, UNLV is not in Las Vegas. It's in unincorporated Clark County. So city of Las Vegas and what people think of as Las Vegas is 2 different things. So just keep that in mind. Can set itself up to follow the path that made Detroit, Hollywood, Silicon Valley, New York, and London world-class centers. It's also worthy, perhaps, of note that New York cost of living is immense. And it is the large, if he's talking about, New York City, I just want to make sure he wasn't saying New York State, because a lot of references to Nevada are to the state, and to Las Vegas is to the county, basically Greater Vegas, not necessarily the city. So to keep it clear, so New York, largest city by population, astronomically expensive. London, also very expensive. Silicon Valley, very expensive. Hollywood, not doing well. Detroit, not doing well. So these are interesting examples to have selected. Excuse me. And then the table and so on. So let's get on to the next section. Rise of financial centers. We're at 1 hour and 6 minutes by my clock. It'll be truncated a little bit with the silence removal. So we'll call it an hour. I'm going to say we are halfway through, but I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit. I don't think I'm referring to the paper as much anymore. Rise of financial centers. So here there are some historical references through, though not a specific timeline, with some causal connections spelled out, which is convenient. There are some of those, but the resolution is centuries and decades. So it's, the 17th century and 1970s and so on, with some contemporaneous circumstances, what was going on at the time that may have led to a transition from one place to another. It used to be, maybe it was Amsterdam, moved to London because of, whatever it is. So you can read that section if you want. It's kind of interesting. Maybe. For a white paper, this is perhaps sufficient because, it's not a history document. It's not a deep dive into the economic modalities. To give context at a high level, okay, this is fine. Section 3 lacks any infographics, charts, timelines. This leads me to pause. If you're going to have a timeline, so the infographics and the other, up until this point have been gratuitous. Here, a timeline that illustrates, here's how one financial center transitioned into another, what was going on at the time, put it in context and so on. So I think that could have been the place to focus on some illustration. The implication, which is left to the reader to deduce in this section, is that the supplied selection of financial centers did not emerge overnight, nor in a few years, but Section 3 ends with the implications for Las Vegas and does not indicate at all what the time horizon is for the proposed transition. 10 years, 100 years, maybe longer. Section 4 will shine some light on this in the, after Section 3, which we're in now. And spoiler alert, 20 years of data. So they're only going back 20 years to now. So do we say 20 years from today forward for a transition of the Greater Vegas area? Maybe. It's hard to say. Section 3 ends with this paragraph in its entirety from page 16. Quote, "The city must find a way to connect conventional finance with digital innovation, existing hubs with new markets, and global capital with Nevada's current sectors. It should not try to replicate Wall Street, San Francisco, or any other financial hubs. The history of financial centers demonstrates that this path is both possible and can last for a long time. Las Vegas can achieve this by ensuring its strengths align with the needs of a changing financial world." Okay. We spend a lot of time comparing against these other places, though, and we'll continue to, but we don't have to be like them. Don't worry about that. Maybe you have to have some sort of comparisons. I think it would be more interesting, and I say this about the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, because of the downtown project, you have an actual innovation, an entrepreneurial ecosystem development project that was going on, and now they're trying to do something similar in the same footprint, although maybe they're backing off of that. Innovate.Vegas is no more. It's now Startup NV, so it's kind of changed the nature of some of that. Anyway, is there still an innovation district even? Who knows? So this is an aspirational quote that I just read. But finding a way is the important part, if I'm not mistaken, and it is the thing Las Vegas must do. We are going to get to an actual timeline proposal in Section 6, so I'm not going to totally wash my hands of this to address the concerns I have raised thus far, so hang on. But generally speaking, this is the place in the document where I would have liked to see some sort of connection between events and time, and then related events in different places, and how all this sort of works out. Because how does Las Vegas fit into this fabric and become a viable player? I will suggest right now, New York has enabled casinos now, right? So how long will it take for New York to become the next Las Vegas? And I believe most people will scoff at that because it isn't really just a collection of metrics, and it isn't a collection of how much time do we let it simmer. So I think there's more to it than this, and I think this is an oversimplification in my opinion. Section 4, quantifying the gap, that is the gap between what we have and what we need, or strengths and weaknesses perhaps. This section is mapping sector data from other geographies to potentials here in Vegas. And for all of Section 4, we should probably have a loop playing in our minds. And you know the one. Past performance is not an indicator of future performance. No, that's not right. A future, what is it? Past performance is not, I copy and pasted that. Not from the document, but it's past performance is not an indicator of future. I think it's supposed to be like potential. Future potential, it's called that. Anyway, past doesn't tell you anything about the future. You're still making predictions. The past may be informative, but, any number of things can change. This entire section is informative, but predictions are not data. As we know, we've talked about this recently, looking forward is still a guess. So no matter how great the data looks from the past, all we have to do is stop being a fun economy and just transition everybody over to finance, we'll be fine. The time series data looks good. There are 2 charts of time series data about growth and whatnot. They're all headed up and to the right. Everybody's happy. For different locations, the magnitudes vary by where the geography is. So New York and California are up at the top, other places below it as far as magnitude of growth or whatever they are. So, you should look at them. What is the quote? Past performance not indicator of future potential, future earnings potential, whatever. Discussion in this section 4, is driving the points home that local GDP, gross domestic product, from financial sectors thriving in these financial centers are great, with higher wages where cost of living and income taxes are high or even very high. So yeah, is it a coincidence that California and New York are at the top of the time series data charts, but also super expensive, high taxes, various other issues. Las Vegas, so Nevada actually, has no income taxes and lacks some of the other taxes that might be considered business unfriendly. So we can compare high tax, high wage localities in the financial sector list to Vegas and suggest that we can have all of the upside without any of the downside. So could this be true? If you price out all of the fun economy people and the fun economy doesn't hold up its end, would there need to be some sort of taxation to fill in the missing gaming revenue and whatnot? That's something to think about, not something to simply ignore or presume, oh, we don't need taxes because we're fine. They just magically get accounted for. So that's where this, a white paper, sure, you can make some of these silly claims without properly researching and providing supporting information. But in reality, if you're going to do damage to one of the major revenue sources for this area, you should figure out what's going to come after that. Not simply say, oh, we're a low tax region, which is very business friendly, so we'll attract all these high wage jobs, price out the people that are enabling the fun economy and the gaming revenue and so on, and then profit. So this always troubles me. This is not limited to this paper. Water break. I would recommend diving into this section if you are interested in this topic, like addressing this gap and what the gaps are. Allegedly, to me, this is a similar disconnect that is useful for supporting a position without detailing implications. Nevada receives a lot of revenue from the trademarked fun economy. That's probably why they got the trademark. What's the most important thing that we're doing? And make sure we get a trademark for it. What is it? Fun economy? Okay, get in there. So they got the trademark assigned in February last year, 2025. Yeah. As cost of living goes up, do the leisure and hospitality workers who enable the fun economy get raises? Do they become high wage employees, or are they priced out, which is more likely? What happens to the fun economy if the employee population shrinks drastically? There are other key industries appearing in the 3-year strategy document published by the LVGEA. That's the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance. 2 weeks prior, and Dr. Chi was in their advisory group, or the panels, or whatever they called, the population of interested parties, stakeholders, I believe, with a capital S, not a small s like us. Listed in the document they published That's the 3-year strategy document. Presumably competing for local talent or to import talent from other places as these key industries establish a presence here, or however they work that out. What happens to costs then? And what happens to the fun economy then? Perhaps the same but faster, as in shrinking, going away, cost of living increases, people being priced out. I'm not trying to be a doomsayer here, but I'm saying these are questions that should be answered. These are threats that should be considered. They're weaknesses as far as unemployment. We tend to have higher unemployment than national. So there are a whole bunch of things that should be thrown in here as like, just in case, what might happen if, right? These are usually hand waved away. Section 5, Las Vegas feasibility. This is where we find some hints at weakness and threat. They're hints, though they are not presented so explicitly. Geography, transportation, connectivity, these are fine. These are subsections. And in fact, it is the geographical location of Nevada during the gold rush and general U.S. expansion along domestic land trade routes that helped, and other just generally people moving around, that helped establish Nevada and its eventual lean into tourism economy. Like, hey, if you're passing through, why don't you stay a while? And hey, how would you feel about some gambling? Add silver mining, and then advance that history today where we have tourism, we have lithium mines and silver, and transit warehouses that are popping up in the north and northeast part of the state, where products are moved to and from as part of an overall land shipping network across the country. Okay, that's okay, right? The human capital and talent section is the one to watch. So that's in Section 5. This is a problem in general in southern Nevada, where educational infrastructure has been explicitly configured to service what is now called the fun economy. Over the years, it had been, the gaming industry, the hospitality industry, etc. So, but just generally in the fun economy, as employees, rather than driving toward higher education into innovation and entrepreneurial, or at least so-called white-collar pursuits, perhaps. Some time ago, we covered the addition of the biotech sector to the Phoenix area, and in fact, the Arizona economy, which, so it affected the whole place, which included facilities construction by TGen, Translational Genomics, and Genentech, and I believe I got those correct, alignment of biotech and biomedical programs at the state's universities, so turning out more research scientists and University of Arizona Medical School, so clinicians, research doctors, biomedical research doctors, the list goes on, and alignment with the vocational programs that were then being added to so they could be offered at community colleges to train lab technicians and other jobs related to the research that was going to be happening at these two facilities, and whatever else was cooking in the new sector, genetics, biotech, whatever the label was. The whole section is not uninteresting, so, check it out. Check out the whole paper, really. But here I must wonder aloud, why does the Greater Vegas area need to make an explicit move toward becoming a financial center? Yes, arguments are made here in favor of, but also the point is raised that Las Vegas probably won't compete in the same spaces as San Francisco, New York, for examples. So I would ask, why not cultivate a financial services ecosystem in Greater Vegas which supports the locality? Now, I didn't say build an ecosystem, but there are some existing components of the existing ecosystem that apply to finance. So why don't we make the most of those and establish the presence of a financial sector, regardless of whether it competes, which can support the locality, maybe the region, rather than trying to adapt Greater Vegas so it can be transformed. Now, I'm not saying that this is the actual plan, but there is an implication more than once that we should just become a financial center instead of, not in addition to. So whether that was just a lack of care in how the words were chosen, not sure. But you do place the fun economy at risk if you gentrify the area, raise the cost of living and so on. So it may happen regardless of whether it was planned. That's another consideration. That may seem like a finer point to think about that. Could a place known for reinventing itself and for pursuing innovation around funding and capital accumulation and all the other services and resources that go along, but in a way that fits the place and its needs? So could we develop a finance sector that fits into the way Southern Nevada is evolving in the near and medium terms, and then see what comes of it. And then there's other things like some existing pursuits, like is it community banks, or I can't remember what it's called. There's like an infrastructure of banking that's really only deployed, I think it's in North Dakota. We could explore different ways of doing finance, not like inventing new math or something, but like what would it make sense to have interstitial financial hub-like resources that are here that don't displace people so much, that don't drive up the cost of living and so on. I'm just throwing these out there. I'm not in finance. I'm not a professor at the Lee Business College. So just throwing them out. The whole section is not uninteresting though. So yeah, you should read that and the whole paper, but that section, it's okay. Something to ponder. Section 6, Roadmap for Transformation. So this is the timeline, if there is one. It's rough, but then it should not be specific anyway. So I think this section can be summarized with this sentence taken from page 34. Quote, if these steps are pursued with persistence and coordination, Las Vegas can reposition itself from a tourism-driven economy to a diversified financial hub anchored in innovation and trust. End quote. So that's a little bit more explicit. Like, why should we do this fun economy thing? We can do finance. And this was a couple of years ago. It would have been, we can just transform into a startup hub, or we're going to be a tech hub, or we're going to be an AI hub. Hopefully, we're not going to be a data center hub. Hopefully the bubble will pop before that happens. So is transformation about removing one in favor of another? Is it a zero sum? So should we get rid of decades of brand awareness and infrastructure development, which is still ongoing, right? Money is still being spent building stadiums and rebuilding and then tearing down raceways and footbridges and so on. And then replace it with an industry where, as the paper has suggested, the Las Vegas area will not be a competitor with the big players anyway. So we want to transform into something that will not be as noteworthy as Las Vegas is as a destination city and now a professional sports hub of sorts. So this paper doesn't really take the position that there are competitors here, no threats. So even though the local competition would be arguably friendly, but it is still competition. There is opportunity cost in picking one over the other. I always lose my place when I wander off the trail. Competitor with the big Las Vegas. So this could stop being Las Vegas in that event. So I referred to the Lost in Austin book. I described it earlier about what happened to Austin in Texas when it became the other Silicon Valley or whatever they were calling it. Silicon Gulch, maybe. And Vegas could follow that same path, and I did a whole episode on that. This is why I included the article, in fact, on the Hill about the Lost and Awesome book. So you can flip through the article real quick, and then I recommend reading the book, although it is not a great book, but the general idea is apropos to what may happen in Las Vegas. Who knows? Predictions. The LVGEA here, the Global Economic Alliance here in Southern Nevada, has launched a 3-year plan to develop new business opportunities, that is, businesses that might either relocate or establish a presence in the greater Vegas area in key industry areas. One of them happens to be, it includes finance and fintech and anything in under that umbrella. But this is a plan underway now. It started in June 2026 through June 2029, 3 years. Does timeline presented in this section 6 conflict with that timeline? Does the timeline presented? Or with the ongoing growth of the fun economy with the next with the next trademarked football league event of national scope coming in 2029 and a baseball stadium in there somewhere, hopefully being finished, along with the basketball team possibility, expansion team forming or moving or however they do that, and more race cars tearing up the streets every year for the next 10 years. The timeline presented implies a lot of cooperation or maybe capitulation for this financial hub transformation, but it's competing against, the paper implies that, but the 3-year timeline implies that there's other key industries, maybe finance, maybe not, that would also be in contention, and there's still the fun economy. So, and then don't forget the entrepreneurs and innovators. We're still here. We'll just fit in the cracks between. Section 6 is not really to be taken seriously, in my opinion. That's my conclusion. This is an aspirational white paper, proposing. Can I read anymore? No. Proposing a lot of blue sky, while life on the ground is more than a bit different, or reality is like that sometimes. Fun economy, key industry diversification, upcoming professional sporting events and infrastructure. These pale in comparison to resource constraints, which might tighten over the next 3 years thanks to the Colorado River Basin situation as it is today and still not resolved as I record this today, along with projected snow and rain deficits, right? So we're not adding water to our resources, unfortunately, and whatever else people are doing to invent, whatever people are going to invent to address drought. And by the way, as water levels fall really deeply, which is projected, there will be a reduction in energy creation or generation at Lake Mead, Hoover Dam. So then what? When you invite more people over and then you turn off the lights, they may be a little upset. Section 6 is, in a word, fantastic. I'm concerned. Section 7, so we have 2 more sections, so we're almost done. We're at 90 minutes. Section 7, concluding remarks. A brief section, luckily, the final sentence reading this, quote, "This white paper is a call to action, M-." They did disclaim some interaction with AI, but I use M-dashes too, so who knows. This white paper is a call to action, M- to seize this moment of opportunity and build a more diversified, resilient, and prosperous future for our community. End quote. And I always ask people, what is the community? People overuse that term, and that's why I don't like to use it. I still do use it. I don't think it's always apropos, but people still stick it in anywhere. Community building, be a part of our community. What does that really mean? So converting Vegas to a financial hub, which parts of the community would that help? Which would it send to somewhere else that they could afford to live and find a job? It would seem this document is of 2 minds, is my guess, to make Las Vegas a financial center as its new major focus, the thing it might be known for. I commented on this moment ago, like, oh, Las Vegas, yeah, it used to be a place for fun. Now it's a place for the opposite, I guess. Or maybe add financial sector to the growing list of things the greater Vegas area believes itself to be someday. Hubs of all kinds, biotech and Hollywood 2.0, and the list goes on. As I've been known to say now and then, we cannot change the nature of a place by sprinkling money on top and declaring it as something new. The same applies here with this transformation concept, Production by Street, concept. As with anything else, of course, there is mention of building an ecosystem, so we know where I have landed on this. Either you've come up with your own definition of what an ecosystem is, or you should actually consider what an ecosystem is and how it forms. And yeah, anyway, well, that's a minor thing in the big picture, so let it go. Since this is a white paper written almost definitely to pitch a plan to implement a financial center plan, so a plan to implement the plan. So that's not an invalid use of the 2 words at the same word twice. That suits the roadmap and possibilities with the place, the university, and the department of which the author is a part, as is the co-author, although less. So while this is in no way an attack on the motivation and the context of this white paper and its authors, it is something to keep in mind, just as the program and your host are focused on the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, of course, and all that entails. My white paper, if I were to write one, might come across with with the interests that I've talked about forever, front and center. Of course they would, just as many of the episodes of this program have done the same. So it is what it is. I do try to present as much, fair information as I can, but I do have that bias, and I'm not hiding it. I assume that Dr. Chi, in particular, Professor Dr. Chi, as a chair for finance at the Lee Business School, college, we can imply there will be a biased interest. I think he actually says it in there, like, yeah, because we are we're in these roles at the college. This is what we do. So, I'm not, that's not a problem. But it is a problem how we interpret this stuff. And it is interesting, the notion of planning to plan, probably because of the disjoint nature of the various silos, the insulation and the sort of competition, really, I think. There's definitely some opportunity cost and some zero-sum thinking and whatnot. So planning a way to come up with a plan is actually not invalid. So, okay, we'll wrap that up. So it is what it is. I have to say, I thought it would be better, this paper, maybe more thorough, but it is what it is. So about the hype and the perception, the reality, because ultimately, this is what I wanted to mention. I'm going to label this white paper as hype because it is a position paper designed to sway opinion in favor of the proposed transformation, focusing more on the idea than on the implications if, say, things go wrong, or even if things go right. What happened? Well, if people lose their jobs in the non-finance sectors, that's probably going wrong. But if the finance sector develops according to plan, and then we end up with like, oh yeah, by the way, the sphere is going to have to close because no finance people come here wanting to see Wizard of Oz. Come on, they're in their hotel rooms with their glasses and pocket protectors and dented thermoses. For as long, I'm just making up words now. For as long as I've been in Vegas, and it's coming up on 13 years, I have witnessed hype driving various actions or selections, or perhaps simply perceptions. That's a foreshadowing. And then people speak about the thing that they read or heard about, and they're, I'm impressed, and this is going to be the big thing. And the metaverse was a huge thing here. It was going to take over Vegas. But before that, it was cryptocurrencies and which casinos are accepting cryptocurrency and the cryptocurrency ATM and all this stuff. And now it's AI, and we're going to build 70 data centers, and who cares if we don't have water? So there's this, but we need them. And all this water, we have plenty of water because we never talk about it until we don't. They read about it, they heard about it, everything's going to be awesome. We're already the next Silicon Valley. Yeah. So that, people, now I'm sold on it, whatever. So then they start talking about it, and other people within earshot think, maybe I should give that a look, or maybe I'll just believe them and not look. Hype is commonplace here, especially. So this is not an attack on the effort, but it is not a legitimate research paper or study report or anything so much as motivated reasoning and action. And so hype. And I think hype is pervasive across some of these things that we're hearing about because the general population of Greater Vegas doesn't really pay attention. So as long as they are told the good news, like, what happens if the data set, don't worry about it. It's awesome. We got 70 of them. It's the next big thing. Okay. I'm not making fun of anybody. That seems like the transaction is like people just accept what they're told. Hopefully hopefully that's something we can change. Perception is a critical thing, especially in the Greater Vegas area, where so many people are not connected to the finer points of economic diversification efforts or implications of actions such as the Formula One pre- and post-race construction impacts, and of course the impact of the race itself on small businesses and so on. It did have some winners and some losers, and I am talking about this businesses near the racetrack and otherwise proximal who suffered most of the bad news. Local media does a bad job of getting the word out across many topics that do not involve building or demolishing a resort or someone winning a big jackpot somewhere, or especially crime and people being injured, hit by cars and so on. That's what makes the news. It's kind of sad. Many conversations and announcements appear on LinkedIn, which may not be visible to the general public due to the way platform permissions work. If you're not connected to the person, you may not see what they're posting, etc. And other pieces of information may also be obscured in other places. We don't have a really solid open information sharing network or platform, a network of platforms. The monthly visitor numbers published on the LVCVA website every month at the end of the month get inordinate exposure thanks to YouTubers and others, major media outlets, national media, sometimes international media, and others generating their own opinions, which may or may not be true or grounded in reality, much less being based on legitimate analysis. That would be nice. And then they got to get out there and make their content so they can monetize it. It is amazing to me how quickly all right, Vegas is back, baby, because tourism is up by 1% from last year, forgetting the fact that last year it was down more than 1%. So we're coming up off of lows, which is not bad news, but we're not ready for the party yet, right? I mean, it's kind of clawing back a recovery. And even then, that's a whole nother discussion about what that really means. Inordinate exposure. And I did a whole episode on using the wrong numbers. These numbers are not applicable to a lot of people here in Greater Vegas who are doing other things. But I guess it feels good to know that people are coming back and that the economy will be strong, but who knows? Somehow people are able to, using motivated reasoning, create content that will take the same exact source data, go to a different part of the strip on a different day or different time, and illustrate with video that Vegas is dead or booming. It's a skill. Finally, reality. What is that anyway? As I've mentioned countless times at this point, sometimes dedicating entire episodes of this program, in fact, our smart city really needs to think about people first. And that means all the people, and make data and information available to them in at least a transparent way. We don't need complete observability, but being able to know what's really going on, not opaque numbers, would be nice, because some of these changes are going to impact so many people who have no say and are not participating and really aren't being informed even. So they don't even have access to know what they don't know. Thank you, Donald Rumsfeld, once again. So that something as outlandish as a transformation away from the fun economy and to a financial center environment, whether the zero-sum change is the actual goal, it's one implication, depending on how the wording should be taken. It sure sounds like it, though. It's at least something that's being considered or pondered. And all of the impact that would have on the people who depend on the status quo in some way. Like, wait, why are you changing everything? I'm finally making money and you're going to kill my startup, or you're going to kill my bookstore, or whatever it is. This would not happen the transparency would not happen behind closed doors or in a LinkedIn post that nobody sees and which receives zero news coverage. So that's one of the things I think that has to change, is that people have to know what's going on before it happens to them. These things and more must change. And that is the end of today's episode. I know it's a long one. Thank you for sticking with me. I have a lot to say on these topics. That's one of the reasons we're trying to put together the Genius Roundtable second cohort. People with a stake in the game, they're stakeholders. They're not always invited to the meetings of the big people up at the top, the ones in the bourgeoisie. But I did a whole episode on the Las Vegas bourgeoisie, in fact. I don't know if that would be, when I said bourgeoisie in a kind of a horrible whisper, it might have been truncated out. So I did that, if that didn't make sense. You can hear my voice is ready to give in. So thanks for sticking with me again. And don't forget to check out buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo for links to all of my programs, this one and every other one. And they are available on YouTube for transcripts. Nobody really listens on YouTube, but it's very explicitly for the automatically generated transcripts. Hopefully those will be useful to someone. If I had a huge audience of people who relied on the transcripts, I would do something better. But I haven't gotten any feedback to the effect that anybody uses them. So, that's my thoughts on this paper. Again, I will close by saying I have nothing against the authors. I don't know them. But I am concerned because this is a trend in the Vegas area over the last decade. Certainly took a break during the pandemic. But there's a lot of hand waving, there's a lot of motivated reasoning, and this affects the way people who are they're not paying attention every day, what their perception is of the near-term future and how it will affect them. I think that's a problem. And if you're a person pursuing entrepreneurial or innovative adventures here in Vegas, you might be at even greater risk because you're maybe bootstrapping or you're tight and you got to pivot or something, and then suddenly, oh wait, it looks like things are not going to be going as I thought they were over the next 3 years. It looks like they're going to try to bring in some finance people, whatever. I'm making fun, but I think people need to pay more attention. We have the technology to make information available. Why are we not doing that? That's where I'll leave it for today. Thank you for listening, and thank you for continuing to be a part of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audience and the Cafe Genius possibilities. Consider being a part of the roundtable. That's it. Take care. Bye-bye.